welcome to another episode of I Own a Business, where we focus on helping practice owners grow the practice of their dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Steve Vargo, and I have with me Dr. Kerry Giedd. And Kerry is the founding partner of Eola Eyes, which is a private group practice that's actually won several awards. They're out of Orlando, Florida, and they have a clinical focus on contact lenses. And when we were talking before with some of our friends at Bausch and Lomb about doing a podcast on building a strong contact lens practice and who we should talk to, they said, you should talk to Dr. Kerry Giedd. So here we are. How are you?
I am great. Thank you. It is such a privilege and pleasure to be with you. I follow your podcast and listen all the time and know that I am in really an esteemed group of experts and industry executives and so forth. So I hope that I can lend something to the conversation that's valuable to our colleagues and members of IDOC and people outside of IDOC. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I'm certain you will lend a lot of value. Kerry, there's a lot of interest in our profession in innovation. And I think that's a good thing in things like specialty care, new technology. And a lot of ODs will tell me that they may be at a point where they're struggling with the business or they're not financially where they want to be with the practice. And they might ask, what areas should I invest in? Should I get into myopia management? Should I buy an IPL? Where should I go? It's a great discussion, but I think sometimes we overlook the basics. And in some cases, it's just, maybe you should just see more patients, fill some of those empty slots, sell more glasses. Let's get back to the basics, but also maximizing the value of the patients you already have. And I think that's where our focus is going to be today is I like to say getting patients to invest into their vision, but that sometimes requires a strategic approach. But one of the ways we can do that is through a more strategic approach to contact lenses. And I do want to mention something. You gave me permission to mention this number, but I think it's a relevant number on this topic. And it's not the only reason this number is impressively high, but I'm sure this plays a big part in it is your strategic approach to contacts is you have a $750 average revenue per patient, which is very strong. It's well above the industry average. So that being said, the first question I'm going to ask you is a bit of a softball. It's going to be so easy. You're going to think it's a trick question, but it's not. So here it goes. Dr. Kerry Giedd, you just saw a contact lens patient. You fit them into contacts, finalize the prescription, send them home, and then you send a survey to their house. And on that survey, it said, how satisfied are you with the contact lenses that you got? And there's 3 check boxes. There's not satisfied, satisfied, and very satisfied. Which one would you like for them to check?
Very satisfied, Steve.
You want very satisfied. So I was looking at some of the data that we were provided before we got on. And one of the data points stood out to me. Only 59% of contact lens wearers report being very satisfied with their contact lenses. And that's not great. But for me, it also highlights opportunity, right? A lot of those people that come in, and I think we kind of quickly rush past the satisfied. How are you doing with your contacts? Yeah, they're fine. Okay, great. Refit them in the same thing. But there's a lot of opportunity there to take those people that would be classified, I suppose, as satisfied into a very satisfied. So can you just speak to that in terms of where do you see the biggest opportunities in a contact lens practice?
Steve, you touched on so many good points there, and you are right that some of our best opportunities are right there in our lap. I mean, there's amazing technology outside of the basic optical and contact lens practices that we all run, but some of our most prevalent and I think abundant opportunities are right those patients who are in our chair daily for their quote unquote routine annual or somewhat regular contact lens exam. And I think part of my partners and our overall practice strategy has always been to it just is natural and flows in our conversation to offer new technology to patients. Every patient, every year, whether it's my first experience with them or my 20th year seeing them, is that I always say it's part of my job, to let you know what's new or different in the world of contacts. And we always offer the opportunities to try things. We ask every patient without exception for the most part, if they're interested in trying contact lenses. Daily lenses didn't instantly become 70% of our practice. And I know there are practices that do even higher percentages of dailies, but that's where we're at now. But that's just been an organic build by just simply talking to our patients and sharing the invitation to try new things. And while, of course, and you and I in our careers, we've seen tremendous growth in the options and different modalities, particularly daily disposables and just the parameter ranges that are available in contact lenses. But we are really at an exceptionally good time to have that conversation. I know historically there are people who would say, like, you'd offer contact lenses for fear of saying or for fear of the patient saying yes, right? You almost didn't want to dive into that with a patient with dry eyes or ocular surface issues or whatever. And with the products we have available now, oftentimes we can meet those needs, and patients are coming to us wanting that advice. I know you referenced the statistic of how many people are really satisfied. I've read some industry data that says somewhere around 70% of patients want their doctors to offer new technology, and that's so often not happening. The metrics on who's fitting, say, multifocal contact lenses as an example, despite the really robust portfolios from really just about every company and many product lines out there, we still have so few of our colleagues kind of leaning into that and meeting those patient needs. So I think the opportunities are really, really endless in contact lenses.
Is there anything in particular that you find that motivates people to change? Because this is always one of there's a few struggles there with contact lenses that are we probably make worse than they are. And one, I think, is our own. It's the time aspect, just like you said.
Yes.
It's like, if I'm running behind, if I'm busy today, I may not even bring up contacts, which obviously hurts the business. But then there's also the motivation from the patient to change something, because a lot of people, and this goes with glasses, with contacts, like a lot of other things, comfort is the enemy of change, right? So if we're satisfied, we might be okay. We might be comfortable. Is there anything that you found in your process of communicating with patients, working with patients, that prompts them to be willing to make a change? And is it just try? You mentioned, like, you giving them permission to sort of just try these out. There's no pressure. Is that the trigger that moves more people? Because we're going to talk about moving them, I think, in your case, because you're 70% daily disposable, in many cases, probably out of a different modality into daily. What is your approach with that?
Yeah, I find that it's been really interesting in recent years. I feel like the tide has shifted, at least in my experience, where the concept of dailies was really kind of struck people. They kind of caught them off guard. It might have been a bit foreign that was even a thing to discard your lenses daily. And now almost all patients are at least familiar with that. I find my new wearers, that when they come in, whether they're a 13-year-old kid here with mom, or honestly a 50-year-old executive, that we rarely mention a non-daily option to new wearers at any age or stage, and they really kind of expect that. I think they'd be almost more surprised if I offered a frequent replacement lens. So I think that, for one, we have to recognize that people really know this is out there. They want us to recommend it, but they're also aware that this is a thing. And they're oftentimes, I think, longing for that. Like, we're not the first to plant this seed as much anymore. We might be, or I might have planted it 5 years ago, and they're finally like, yeah, I think I'm ready to try this year. And I used to say that about my LASIK patients all the time. They'd think about LASIK for years before you pulled the trigger. And it wasn't an instant gratification that you did this consultation, referred them, did your co-management, and they had LASIK. I mean, it was a bit of a journey. And sometimes that's the case in contact lenses. But we take the approach of offering and just try, like you said. I think that is a big part of it. It doesn't feel like it is a lot of effort. It doesn't feel like it's a lot of chair time. I think, to back up a little bit, part of why that happens is how you choose to run your practice really efficiently. I think we all know those metrics that you have roughly 40 minutes with that patient, or you're going to, the return on that investment of time, they're not going to spend as much. They've got to get back to work. They have to get back to life, and you're on to your next patient. So you have to be efficient every step of the way. That includes the contact lens fitting and that whole experience, the discussion and the offering. But I think a big thing that has surrounded our success is that we really try to make it easy to do business with us at every step of the process. And that may be scheduling your appointment online, texting us, doing your online intake form so you don't have that dreaded pre-appointment paperwork that means your 11 o'clock appointment started at 11:15 because you had, 3 pages of things to sign off on. I think people underestimate or sometimes overlook how valuable our EHR and contact lens manufacturer or distributor partnerships are helping us with contacts now. I've seen just in the last few years, and the EHR that we use, it directly syncs with our contact lens distributor. So with rare exception, do we ever have to go in and enter a contact lens parameter to place an order? I mean, everything just talks to each other. When it comes to patient ordering, we partner with a distributor that even, we want them to order year supplies. I think we'll probably talk a little bit about that because that's an important topic. But even for that part-time wearer who might just need 1 box every 6 months because they really do love their glasses, but they want contacts for special occasions, they can order 1 box and have it shipped to them for free. And they can order it Sunday night at 9 o'clock from my office when I'm surely not there. So there are so many opportunities to build efficiency into our practices now. And there's so many support, aspects of that in the industry that, a few extra minutes of chair time really doesn't net out to even a longer patient experience the way that you can craft your practice. So I think that's for us, been a really, a mindful and intentional, journey to make everything as seamless as possible along the way.
There's a couple of great points there, and one is the efficiency point. I think we really have to think about that when we're trying to drive any aspect of our practice. I had we did a podcast a while back with Dr. Selena McGee, who has a big dry eye practice. And I asked her the same topic. You only have so much time. She's aware of these numbers, the 40 minutes and all of that. And she says, well, her response was, I'm never not doing something. So I think they taught us in school, right? We go in, we do a long case history, then we do all kinds of tests, then we sit down and we educate. We really have to rethink that in the time frame we've got. So she's like, there's an art to it where you don't want to be doing too much, eye contact is important and all of that. But she goes, I'm doing my best to constantly work, ask questions, educate, inform through the whole process. So I get a lot out of that chunk of time that I have with the patient. And then is just such a great point on making it as simple and frictionless as possible, because we can make it really complicated if we wanted to. And so some marketing things I had read before if you're starting a business, two of the top things that attract people to businesses from more of a B2B standpoint. But if you can show people how to make money, that was number one. Right behind it, if you can show people how to make something simpler, so it's so key to be able to present things in a simple manner. There's a lot of value to the dailies if we stay on that, to the business. And I mean, one of the things I'll always look at is just contacts in general, the lifetime value, because they're coming in more often. I mean, it's hard. We want patients to come back once a calendar year, right? But that's just not as important to them to come in yearly. But what is important to them is when they're run out of contacts, and that drives them in more often. So there's better compliance. But from the patient standpoint, is there anything with dailies that you focus on with the patient to drive more value for that option?
Yes, Steve, I think you're right. I mean, it goes without saying for the practice, those are very real and tangible numbers to us when we know that those patients are the most compliant, and both with their disposal schedule and their frequency of returning, their lifetime value to us is best. But conveying a patient facing and patient friendly message, selling for the sake of selling is I feel like a miserable existence. I was trained to be an optometrist. I love what I do. But I could never look my patients in the eye and sell something just because it's going to benefit my bottom line or anything else. I just couldn't do that all day. So I think, our journey towards such a heavy daily disposables practice, it's certainly been supported by the great products that are out there. But really just genuinely knowing that and seeing all day, every day that these are my happiest patients. Like they really are the ones that come in compliantly, happily. They might embrace newer technology. They might try a newer daily. They might be, becoming presbyopic and now we need multifocals. So it's not that their journey has ended just because they went to a daily disposable even 5 years ago. But that, you feel that for your patients and your new ones who you're trying to share that experience. I always say, like, let it sell itself. I am never here to upsell you on something that doesn't bring you value. And I can say that with confidence, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And I think my patients really do see that, that genuine, the integrity of our approach, and we give them the opportunity to try. And it's kind of an age-old strategy, but one thing I employ too that isn't my day in, day out thing, but particularly for those hyperopic presbyopes that want to shop for glasses and really can't see what they look like. And sure, they can take a selfie and they can FaceTime their daughter and all the things, but I'll pop on a pair of multifocal contacts on a patient so they can simply, shop an optical and be able to see the frame details and things. We have a great optical boutique, and a lot of our frames have really neat characteristics, and really, it's nice to be able to see those. And as a presbyope myself, I can appreciate more and more how miserable it is to shop and not be able to read the labels. So anyway, even little things like that of showing people that they can wear them, or the -8 patient who wants to shop for glasses that, let me just pop on some contacts for you and, you can see. And it just feels very, it doesn't feel hard, when you just believe it, so I tell my patients, that these are my happiest patients, in my practice, as well as, industry data and study after study supports that our patients who wear dailies, they're always the happiest. So, I think that's just an easy flow to have when you see it and you believe it. And I would hope that among our colleagues, that's really what they do see, even if they're smaller percentage of dailies, having that conversation and just telling every patient that this is why you believe in this. They want your advice. Don't prejudge them. I know you've mentioned it, Steve. We all talk about how we normalize things. When we're talking to patients who, oh, I'm fine. That satisfied patient that you mentioned earlier on, oh, the tech has done their workup. They've checked the boxes, no discomfort. They haven't come in kicking and screaming. So, we'll keep them with the status quo. Those patients a lot of times really have normalized the eye strain they've experienced, the dry eyes they've experienced at their screens in particular, and offering them that technology that is going to bring them value. It just feels like a regular part of your day without a sales pitch.
It's a really powerful message when you reference other people, because you were talking about how routinely the patients that you fit into this modality are the happiest patients that you have. And I find that a lot of people are interested in what's working for others. I find that in my own position, because people will call me. My role is helping members. And a lot of the advice I give is derived from years of having the privilege of working with so many other doctors like yourself and just observing what works, what doesn't work. But I found that question really interesting because it would come up so often. People might call me for help, but then say, what are all the other doctors doing? So there was a lot of interest in that social proof and what's working for other people, and more of a long game aspect here. But what I'm hearing too is something I think any practice should work toward is continually building that loyalty and trust. Because when you say, this is the option I recommend, I think this is the option that worked best for you, trust plays a major role. I just had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and he's not in our profession, but he was talking about his experience with his optometrist. And he says, I hate to say this, but he goes, I don't really trust my optometrist. He goes, I don't distrust him, but if he tells me to do something, I'm not necessarily going to be bought in right away. Where my dentist, if my dentist says to do something, I'm just like, okay, my dentist said I need to do this, so I need to do it. So you've had the benefit of building that over 20 years. You just mentioned 20 years before was you had an anniversary at your practice. So congratulations for that. But I mean, I would assume you would agree with that trust component in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you do build that with a patient. It doesn't mean you have to have seen them for 20 years to have established that. I think your staff starts to instill that from the very first interaction that they have. Perhaps even your website or your scheduling process, even, starts to set the stage for what that patient is going to experience with you. The cleanliness of your office, the technology that you offer, just how that whole experience goes, I think builds that. And then of course, as we come in, and as data shows, it doesn't take 40 minutes of doctor time to tell them, why they need to be confident in you. You've built that with the way that you communicate, the way that your practice has, set itself up in that patient's mind. And yeah, I mean, I think that it goes leaps and bounds to, come back to us with those loyal patients, and it makes our lives just so much better day in and day out, where you're talking to friends and seeing that patient again this year, and you're asking how their daughter's wedding was last year, and you're talking about contacts too. But it's that return value and that loyalty of patients is huge. And I think as you tap into the contact lens part of the discussion and telling them about new technology, I know one conversation and question that comes up to me, and I'll see it posted on maybe different forums and things, is how do you, from a business standpoint, how do you make it work with contact lenses and justify contact lens fitting fees and all of this? And you have to give a patient a reason why you charged them that fee. I mean, you do owe it to the patient to at least explain that, and not just simply do your slit lamp exam and do the things that we know are a little above and beyond for a contact lens wearer. But, offering that is all part of that experience. Even if they don't change lenses this year, I think that, patients pay us top dollar for the experience they get in our office. And I was reminded of this recently. Just last week, we had a leak in our office, and it thankfully wasn't anything major. And one of the joys of owning your own practice and owning your own building in particular is that you get to play janitor and handyman and all the things, right? And so I had a leak detection company come out and paid a flat fee of $650 for this tech to be there for 20 minutes and tell me I had a bad valve on my hot water heater. And I wrote the check, and he left, and I then had to call the plumber who was going to fix the actual problem. And I kind of thought to myself, dang, $650 for 20 minutes with this guy, and that's just, and it just was a good reminder, right? Of like, he had the knowledge, the experience, the training, the equipment to come up with that diagnosis. And we sometimes sell ourselves short, right? That patient is coming to us because we have this knowledge, and fees, our time is valuable, but we also need to show the patients that we've earned that to some extent, and that may be in the form of offering new technology or whatnot. So, I think your business model, so to speak, or your business plan as it relates to contact lenses is certainly, you look at the profitability of contacts and dailies versus reusables and some of those things, but the fitting process and the fees that you charge for that, when people are quick to say, oh, you can't make any money on contact lenses, or they're just a commodity or whatnot, or all my patients are going to the internet anyway. Hopefully none of that's really true. And I don't find it to be true overall, but if you've had that service experience and that payment for their contact lens fitting, I mean, it still should be a win for you. It's a practice builder and a profitable relationship in that regard.
Yeah, and I think it's underrated, but going back to that loyalty and that trust, I think people really do want to do business with they like and people they like and trust. So I think there is some offices do struggle with that, no doubt. They have more people walking out the door than others, and they're going to get a little jaded in their thinking, this is just how things are. But strategically, you can get in front of that. I truly believe that people still want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And I want to apologize real quick too. I've been losing my voice, so I feel right now like a 14-year-old going through puberty. I don't know if it's coming through on the thing, but I'm a little scratchy.
It sounds just fine. I'm sure the listeners would back me up on that once this goes
we'll see.
online.
Yeah, I keep waiting for that high pitch, like screechy thing to come out or something, but we've made it this far. You alluded to before to annual supplies, so maybe this might be a two-part question. What is your approach to that? Because that's where some offices struggle as well. And there's genuine concern over people buying a 3-month supply, a 6-month supply, that they're going to get that supply there and then go somewhere else. And once they go
Right.
somewhere else, you've lost them to the
Yeah.
internet. Because I've never bought contact lenses over the internet, but I'm pretty sure they make it really easy for you to keep doing it once you're in their system, right?
Yeah.
So what is your approach to that? And then part two of this, and we talked about this before, and this part's difficult, training your staff, because this is not something you can really do on your own. When we truly get into the sales part, there you're done. You've fitted them. They tried on the new contacts. They like it. You've wrote the prescription, and now we're talking about annual supplies, or maybe even when we're talking patient comes in, the technician working with the patient in the pre-test room who says that they're having some dryness or irritation with the contacts they've got. The staff is involved with this at different points. So, and that's not easy. And I don't know if there's a practice out there that doesn't struggle, especially these days, on that leadership component and staff training and making sure that everybody's on the same page. So, what is your approach to that? So again, annual contacts, staff training.
Yeah. So I think one key thing, and this is, I think, an age-old recommendation that we try to remind ourselves of, and staff training never ends, right? And just like our continuing education goes on, our staff needs to be reminded of things. But we always work under the assumption that the patient is going to get an annual supply. Like, it may not happen. If we certainly know that this patient is going to be a part-time wearer, we'll note that. So we, kind of tailor the approach accordingly. But we just present that checkout process with, where would you like us to ship your annual supply? Is this your address? And here's the rebate. And I think that is by far the most direct, easiest to train. Still needs reminders at times, but just this is our protocol for how we do this. And I think that's one key part of it, as opposed to the alternative of, well, your vision plan covers 2 boxes. Would you like 2 boxes, or would you like me to tell you what the cost would be for more, or some version of that conversation, right? And it kind of shocks me, but I think that there are a lot of places, and I think it probably is not because the staff is trying to do anything wrong, but they've probably never been educated and empowered to do differently. And if we look at our team and someone who's, having this interaction with a patient, and certainly to them, understandably, $100 is a lot of money, and they're oftentimes prejudging, I think, what a patient might want to do. I find that despite the economic struggles of recent years, patients are more open than ever to daily disposables and the somewhat higher cost of that. So I think the minute I start to prejudge things, my opticians are quick to remind me. We were talking about pricing on new progressive eyeglass lenses recently, and I was like, wow, it just did kind of strike me as, wow, this is a big investment. This is just the lens before any treatments or upgrades or refrains, and they remind me, that it is, and that's okay. Patients understand. So when it comes back to the annual supplies, just working on the assumption and having that conversation right from the start that they're going to get an annual supply oftentimes sets you up for success in selling that patient the annual supply. The other thing that's huge is rebates. And I would hope that all practitioners and offices are really training their staff to take advantage of those options and opportunities for patients, because it's a great opportunity for a patient. And you can oftentimes generalize, especially on a premium daily disposable with the lenses that are lenses of our lenses of choice, that they're going to roughly pay for 9 months and get a full 12 months of lenses. I mean, it's a huge difference. And they might qualify for a small rebate on a 6-month supply. But most of the time, there's a huge incentive for the patient to get that annual supply. So we talk about that. The other part of that I think is really key, and I think this does oftentimes come from me, the doctor, kind of setting the stage for this right from the start, is that, again, with that expectation in mind, the patient's going to do this anyway, is just that this really is easy for them. We're not trying to do something that serves us and not serves our patients. And that, that just gets to the heart of all of this stuff for me. It's like, I'm not trying to sell anybody something that isn't good for them. It's going to be easy 3 and 6 and 9 months. Contacts are just there ready to go. And you don't have to call me or email online, and whether it's through my office or not, just have them. And so I think it's just, we just kind of assume they're going to get that. We talk to them as if they will. We mention throughout the process that, hey, it's just easy. You're just going to, your boxes, I'll kind of sometimes joke, your boxes will take up a little more space than your, previous monthlies or 2-week lenses or whatnot. But it really is, I think, a pretty streamlined process when you just assume it's going to go that way.
And I think when you deal with these on the front end, you get less price objection or rejection or pushback on the back end. I think sometimes the assumption that if I don't address these things now, if I don't establish the value, if I don't understand, and a lot of this too is the reason I think a lot of times things feel salesy is because you haven't taken the time to fully understand the patient. You want to not feel salesy doing something, ask more questions. Understand what somebody's primary concerns and needs and motivators are. And then once you do that, 2 things happen. One, it ceases to feel salesy because now you just feel like you're helping somebody. Secondly, presenting the solution becomes easy. It becomes much faster because now I'm not giving you a 15-minute spiel on why you should do this. I'm spending 2 minutes telling you what I can provide that's going to solve your problem. So was it, it was an Albert Einstein quote that said, if I had 60 minutes to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes learning about the problem and 5 minutes solving it.
Yeah.
And I've always looked at things that way. If we just take more time to understand the patient, then that solution gets much easier because now I'm just targeting what's important to you. I'm not trying to give you 15 different things. That's what we call the feature dump, right? In sales. I'm just going to give you a bunch of things hoping something sticks. But the problem is I'm giving you maybe 2 things that stick and 13 reasons to not buy it. Like, why would I pay for all those things when I'm not going to use it? So a lot of that is just that understanding. So I want to close out here, Kerry, with, we always try to keep this non-commercial, but our good friends and vendors at Bausch & Lomb were gracious enough to set this up, and I'm glad they did. So I want to give a shout out to them, and just anything you might want to add. I know you've used some of their products, and feel free to put a little plug or shout out for anything you use.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yes, I have a great relationship with Bausch & Lomb. I've had the opportunity for many years to work closely with them as they've launched new products and even tried things before they've come to market. And one lens I had the opportunity to try and we have loved since it has launched is the infused multifocal lens. And they have incorporated these ingredients. They call it ProBalance technology, but really what that means is they've looked to this, these global experts and the TFOS DUCE 2 report that we all in practice know and reference with our dry eye patients and what we do for them. But these, this is a lens that has really delivered maximum comfort and, for patients who have struggled with their contact lens wearability and performance, we just have both in a sphere and a multifocal, a great product to offer them. From a multifocal fitting standpoint, we have, I think, what is, in my opinion, the easiest lens to fit that we've ever had in a multifocal. It has, this is not a new design for Bausch & Lomb, but they're 3-zone progressive, as they call it. But they have really, I think, brought the best iteration of that to the table with the latest Infuse. It works well in other modalities and with Ultra, and they did it previously in BioTrue. But Infuse has really just been a game changer in our practice. And I think for people, the stats on who's trying multifocals in our profession now are still a little low. And I think if you've hesitated to embrace multifocals, this is one that you can dive into and feel confident that you're going to have some great success with patients, both from a wearability comfort standpoint and a vision standpoint. It's been just a great and welcome addition to our practice and patients.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. And yeah, check those lenses out. This was great. You said at the beginning, I wasn't sure if I'll add value, and I can now confirm you've added value.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks, Kerry. Thanks for Bausch & Lomb for setting this up. Definitely check out some of the lenses that Dr. Giedd mentioned. Thanks to Dr. Giedd. And if you'd like more information about iDoc and how we work with ODs to help them grow their practice, you can find out more at idoc.net. So thank you for listening.